Hold that thought close, because what follows isn't merely advice. It's an alarm bell, a catalyst, a pivotal juncture. The year 2026 isn't simply arriving, it's demanding an answer. It's a threshold, a boundary drawn, an instant when every woman must confront a single piercing question. Did I command my destiny? Or did I sit waiting for someone else's approval? Pay attention now. What follows are 6 essential truths every woman must grasp before 2026 arrives, and they're absolutely non-negotiable. Your voice transcends mere sound waves emerging from your throat. It represents the energy that establishes your reality. It forms the architecture of who you are, the blueprint of your limits, the manifestation of your inherent value. Still, countless women have learned to regard their voice as something delicate, something requiring softness, concealment, or careful rationing. Society has persistently instructed you that silence equals agreeability. Quietness equals likability. Being undemanding equals being easy to maintain. Yet none of these qualities translate to genuine power. Before 2026 dawns, you must grasp that your voice wasn't designed to nestle comfortably within another person's preferences. It exists to challenge when required, to motivate without seeking approval, and to announce your identity before anyone attempts to label it for you. Your voice serves as your navigation system, and without hum music, its guidance, you become lost at sea. Consider the chances you never seized because you wavered before speaking, the concepts you suppressed because you wondered if they measured up, the instances you remained silent to avoid labels like difficult, emotional, dramatic, or excessive. Each instance of self-silencing dims a fragment of what lies ahead, not from insufficient ability, but from concealing your authentic nature. And believe this, if you don't author your own story, another person will compose it for you. They'll determine your worth, your limitations, and which domains you're permitted to access. This makes your voice absolutely non-negotiable. Not volume for volume's sake, but presence, complete presence. Because your presence equals your strength. There's a purpose behind society's centuries, long attempts to silence women. A woman speaking her reality cannot be dominated, not through societal expectations, not through intimidation, not through convention. And once she discovers her voice, everything else follows: her self-assurance, her focus, her bravery. So when we discuss employing your voice before 2026, we're not suggesting you learn to yell. We're urging you to refuse remaining diminished. We're encouraging you to hold firm when others attempt to minimize you. We're calling you to reclaim the aspects of yourself you concealed for survival's sake. This world keeps transforming, and your silence won't shield you from evolution's velocity. But your voice will transport you through it with purpose and command. Let's acknowledge reality. Speaking up isn't always simple. It invites tension, unease, criticism, confusion. But the ultimate gamble lies in remaining her music silent and awakening 5 years hence in an existence you never selected. You merit being heard in spaces where choices get determined. You merit expressing your requirements without apology. You merit proclaiming your aspirations without downplaying them. You merit requesting your true value, not whatever someone hopes you'll accept. Every instance you choose to speak reinforces the conviction that you matter. And when you genuinely believe in your significance, your entire approach transforms. Your negotiations transform, your relationships transform, your leadership transforms. Her music, your voice, becomes the initial piece that activates every remaining aspect of your existence. Your voice also instructs others in how to regard you. If you murmur your limits, people will treat them as mere proposals. If you conceal your standards, people will presume you possess none. If you suppress your unease, people will assume your content. The world mirrors the frequency you broadcast. When you communicate with precision, the world accommodates. Her music. When you communicate with determination, the world pays attention. When you communicate with the assurance that your existence isn't coincidental, the world ceases demanding you validate it. Don't await permission to employ your voice. Employ your voice and observe how reality reshapes itself accordingly. Before 2026, pledge to yourself that you'll never again compromise your authenticity by muting it. Music, express yourself in the conference, even if your pulse accelerates. Defend yourself even if your voice trembles. State your desires even if you dread the response. Because development doesn't emerge from ease. It emerges from boldness. And your boldness starts with utterance. Music, your voice, isn't intended as decoration. It's intended as power. Power that shields you. Power that proclaims you. Power that molds your fate. This marks the year you cease whispering and begin respecting the strength that's always resided within you. Because when a woman finally chooses to employ her voice, the world doesn't merely hear her, it experiences her. And once the world experiences you, it can never disregard you again. Boundaries aren't barriers, they're statements of self-worth. They're not about excluding the world. They're about admitting only what's appropriate. Yet too many women have been taught that boundaries render them difficult or ungrateful or cold. That refusing somehow renders them egotistical. That safeguarding their tranquility renders them challenging to manage. That represents one of history's most damaging falsehoods taught to women. Before 2026, you must comprehend that boundaries aren't acts of dismissal. They're acts of congruence. Every boundary you establish sends a message to the world: I understand my identity. I understand my worth. And I'm no longer accessible for anything inferior. A boundary forms a line, certainly, but it's also reflection. It compels you to examine yourself and inquire, what am I permitting? What am I rationalizing? What am I pretending doesn't disturb me? Women frequently remain in circumstances far longer than necessary. Not because they miss the fractures, but because they've been programmed to merge their discomfort with forbearance, to extend themselves impossibly thin and label it devotion, to accept fragments and persuade themselves it's abundance. But an existence constructed without boundaries becomes an existence constructed on bitterness. And bitterness functions as silent toxin. It expands quietly, and it extinguishes your essence long before you recognize you've lost your vitality. Boundaries serve as the remedy. Music, they purify, they illuminate. They remind you that your requirements aren't impositions, they're realities. Boundaries don't merely protect you, they establish your worth. People regard you based on what you permit, not what you merit. If you tolerate disrespect, it becomes your norm. If you allow inconsistency, it becomes your pattern. If you overlook misconduct, it becomes your expectation. You instruct people in how to engage with you through how you react to their conduct. Before 2026, it's vital to acknowledge that not upholding your boundaries equals erasing them. And when you erase your boundaries, you erase fragments of yourself. You contract to accommodate others' expectations. You flex to prevent conflict. You silence your requirements to preserve harmony. But harmony demanding self-abandonment is merely gradual disintegration. Genuine harmony emerges from respecting yourself, even if it unsettles others. Establishing boundaries isn't about harshness. It's about authenticity. It's about declaring, this represents my requirement. This represents what I'm no longer accessible for. This marks where I establish my limit. Authenticity liberates you. It releases you from pretense. It releases you from bitterness. It releases you from perpetually rearranging yourself to maintain others' comfort. Too many women worry that boundaries will repel people. But here's reality: boundaries don't drive away suitable people. They reveal unsuitable ones. Anyone offended by your boundaries profits from their absence. Anyone respecting you will respect your limits. Anyone meriting space in your existence will honor what you protect. Boundaries filter distractions so your existence can finally achieve coherence. Establishing boundaries carries power, but sustaining them brings transformation. Anyone can announce limits during frustration's peak, but genuine transformation occurs when you maintain consistency courageously, unapologetically. That involves refusing without justifying yourself. That involves departing from conversations disrespecting you. That involves restricting access to people depleting you. That involves refusing to shoulder emotional burdens not belonging to you. And that involves selecting yourself even when it feels foreign. Because selecting yourself constitutes a practice, not a singular choice. And once you develop that practice, your confidence transforms, your energy transforms, your relationships transform, your entire reality begins aligning with your worth. Before 2026 arrives, establish this commitment to yourself. No more contracting. No more overextending. No more sacrificing your requirements for approval you don't even desire. You're not obligated to remain accessible. You're not required to be perpetually accommodating. You're not accountable for anyone's comfort at your own expense. You're accountable for your tranquility, your energy, your future, and your emotional wellness. And boundaries represent the instruments protecting them. They're the demarcations keeping you connected to your authenticity. They're the structures supporting your development. They're the criteria shaping your existence. When you respect your boundaries, you respect yourself. Have music, and when you respect yourself, you become unstoppable. Because the instant a woman decides her boundaries are non-negotiable, her existence no longer operates on permission. It operates on power. Financial independence transcends mere currency. It represents liberation. It represents the capacity to make selections without terror, to depart from circumstances no longer serving you, and to stand proudly without depending on anyone for rescue. For too long, women have been programmed to believe that financial matters are intricate, overwhelming, or somebody else's domain. But the world keeps changing, and dependence carries a cost, a steep one. Before 2026, your music must comprehend this: financial independence isn't indulgence, it's infrastructure. Without it, every choice you make gets filtered through survival's lens rather than aspirations. And you weren't created to merely survive. You were created to ascend. In music, currency lacks emotion. But women's relationship with currency frequently doesn't. Many women hesitate to request salary increases, charge appropriately, invest confidently, or negotiate without apologizing. Why? Because society has instructed them that virtuous women don't discuss currency, don't prioritize currency, don't pursue currency. That mentality functions as imprisonment. Currency isn't avarice. Currency isn't selfishness. Currency represents security, alternatives, possibility, and independence. Currency represents the distinction between remaining somewhere by choice and remaining because alternatives don't exist. You merit the stability allowing deep, complete music, breathing without anxiety strangling your aspirations. Comprehending your finances represents an exercise in power. Every dollar you generate, accumulate, invest, or safeguard makes a statement. Music, I'm accountable for my own future. Too many women depend on employers, companions, or circumstances to establish their financial security. But dependence surrenders control. It generates imbalance. It grants another person authority over your choices, your lifestyle, your trajectory. That isn't empowerment. That's vulnerability masquerading as comfort. Before 2026, you must claim ownership of your financial literacy. That involves knowing precisely what you generate, what you owe, what you expend, and what you desire. Music involves educating yourself, even if nobody surrounding you discusses prosperity. It involves shattering generational patterns that maintained women silent and bewildered about music currency. Expanding your currency isn't exclusively for the affluent. It's for the astute. Music, many women believe investing carries risk, complexity, or isn't for people like me. But the genuine risk lies in inaction. Music, inflation climbs, emergencies materialize, opportunities emerge and vanish. An existence music doesn't pause because finances feel uncomfortable to contemplate. Investing doesn't demand perfection. It demands participation. Even modest, consistent investments accumulate power across time. Even straightforward financial strategies generate stability. You don't require expertise. You require intention. Prosperity gets constructed through daily choices, not theatrical moments. The sooner you begin, the more formidable you become. And by 2026, you should perceive yourself as someone capable of commanding currency, not draining it. Financial independence also reconstructs your relationships. When you can sustain yourself, you select differently. You love differently. Music, you negotiate differently. You don't tolerate disrespect stemming from financial terror. You don't remain in stagnant positions stemming from insecurity. Music, you don't accept fragments when you understand you can construct your own banquet. Currency grants you the capacity to align your connections with your principles rather than your survival. It enables you to partner from affection, not dependence. Her music, it permits you to depart when remaining's price becomes excessive. This isn't about becoming callous. It's about becoming complete. You merit relationships rooted in respect, not leverage. Before 2026, establish this commitment. You'll become the executive of your own existence. You won't surrender your financial future to chance, to other people, or to obsolete beliefs that maintain generations of women restricted. Hum music you'll generate with confidence, accumulate with discipline, invest with intention, and safeguard with wisdom. You'll construct a financial infrastructure that supports you, not one that crumbles when existence shifts. Because existence will shift. The question becomes whether you'll be prepared. Currency won't guarantee happiness, but it'll guarantee selections. And selections represent freedom's truest manifestation. When you control your finances, you control your destiny. And a woman controlling her destiny is unstoppable. Because when a woman achieves financial independence, she doesn't merely transform her existence, she transforms her legacy. The relationships you maintain today are molding the future you're approaching, whether you acknowledge it or not. Every person in your intimate circle nourishes your mind, energizes your spirit, and affects your choices. Some propel you onward, some restrain you, some love you profoundly, some deplete you silently. Her music, and before 2026, you must comprehend this reality. Your existence cannot elevate if your relationships remain anchored in an earlier iteration of you. You're developing, transforming, becoming someone more powerful and more aligned. But if you remain surrounded by people who only comprehend your history, they'll restrict your future. You cannot ascend while maintaining company that profits from your stagnation. Many women remain in relationships, romantic, social, professional, because of history, not alignment, because of loyalty, not reciprocity, because of guilt, not authentic connection. But time invested isn't justification for remaining. Familiarity doesn't equal compatibility. Her music, when you cling to people no longer matching your trajectory, you diminish yourself to maintain relatability. You minimize your aspirations so you don't intimidate them. You dim your ambitions so you don't lose them. And in doing so, you lose yourself. Development demands authenticity, and authenticity demands courage. Not everyone who accompanied you this far is meant to accompany you into the following chapter. The people in your existence should never feel like weights. They should feel like wind propelling you forward, elevating your spirit, challenging your potential. But too frequently women tolerate relationships that suffocate rather than strengthen. You recognize the indicators' conversations, leaving you depleted, not motivated. Connections taking more than they contribute. People questioning your vision rather than supporting it. People feeling threatened by your development rather than celebrating it. These relationships aren't harmless. They're burdensome. And carrying that burden into 2026 will decelerate you more than any obstacle the world could position in your path. You require relationships honoring the woman you're becoming, not the woman you previously were. This involves granting yourself permission to outgrow people, environments, and dynamics no longer aligning. It involves selecting depth over history, support over obligation, and reciprocity over routine. It involves understanding that you don't have to force connections, requiring you to contract. The appropriate relationships don't demand you select between being loved and being yourself. They accommodate both. They don't shame your transformation. They anticipate it. They don't pull you backward to who you were. They advance with you toward who you're becoming. But let's be clear, elevating your relationships doesn't involve severing everyone. It involves recalibrating. It involves identifying who genuinely adds worth to your existence. It involves allowing yourself to seek fresh circles that nourish your development, challenge your thinking, and celebrate your becoming. Powerful relationships aren't accidental. They're deliberate. They're constructed on authenticity, respect, mutual aspiration, and a shared dedication to becoming superior. When you surround yourself with people believing in your potential, your confidence expands. When you surround yourself with people thinking bigger, your aspirations stretch. When you surround yourself with people who are developing, your development becomes inevitable. Before 2026 arrives, establish this commitment. You'll no longer sacrifice your transformation to maintain connections rooted in comfort rather than purpose. You'll select relationships that elevate you, not exhaust you. You'll allow yourself to seek fresh energy, fresh perspectives, fresh support systems, and fresh environments matching where you're heading, not where you've been. You merit relationships, honoring your development, amplifying your voice, and standing beside you without terror or insecurity. You merit people who perceive your radiance and don't recoil when it intensifies. You merit connections that pour into you with the identical intensity you pour into the world. Because when a woman aligns her relationships with her future, nothing from her history can restrain her. Your mind represents the engine propelling every aspect of your existence, your selections, your practices, your relationships, your results. And yet, most people regard their mind as secondary, music nourishing it with whatever's easiest, most familiar, or most comfortable. But comfort doesn't generate development. Comfort maintains you stagnant and music predictable small. Before 2026, you must comprehend that investing in your mind isn't optional. It's imperative. It's the most valuable investment you'll ever execute because everything you construct in your existence begins with how you think. If your mentality remains unchanged, your existence will too. Development is mental before it ever becomes observable. The world transforms faster than ever. Technology, culture, opportunities, challenges. Everything evolves at lightning velocity. And the people who fall behind won't be those lacking talent. They'll be those who ceased learning. You cannot enter the future with an antiquated mind. You cannot anticipate fresh results with obsolete beliefs. You cannot advance into your following chapter with identical thinking that maintained you playing small in the previous one. Before 2026, you must commit to becoming a perpetual learner. Not because you're unprepared, but because you're unstoppable. Learning isn't weakness's indication. It's power's indication. It demonstrates you're willing to adapt, to develop, to ascend above limitations that once felt permanent. Every book you read represents a doorway. Every fresh skill you acquire represents a tool. Every question you pose represents a breakthrough awaiting occurrence. But too frequently, women silence their curiosity because the world has programmed them to remain in their lane, follow regulations, and not pose too many questions. Curiosity isn't disorder, it's fuel. The more you expand your mind, the more you expand your possibilities. When you upgrade your thoughts, you upgrade your existence. When you upgrade your knowledge, you upgrade your confidence. And confidence constructed on understanding is unshakable. No one can remove it from you. No one can diminish it. Music, no one can exploit your ignorance against you when you refuse remaining uninformed. There's a powerful transformation that occurs when you start nourishing your mind with intention. You begin perceiving patterns where you once perceived confusion. You begin recognizing opportunities where you once felt trapped. You begin understanding yourself profoundly instead of fearing your own aspiration. Clarity replaces uncertainty. Music strategy replaces disorder, and purpose replaces confusion. Investing in your mind doesn't merely provide information. It provides trajectory. It sharpens your voice, strengthens your choices, and enhances your emotional intelligence. You don't merely react to existence anymore. You respond to it with power and precision. And let's be authentic, your environment matters. The content you consume, the conversations you entertain, the voices you surround yourself with, they all shape your mind. You cannot develop mentally if you're constantly surrounded by negativity, limited thinking, or people who ridicule your desire to learn. Protect your mental environment identically to how you protect your physical space. Be intentional with what you permit into your mind. Seek voices challenging you to aim higher. Seek information expanding your worldview. Seek experiences making you question assumptions you've carried for years. Music, when you curate your mental environment, your potential multiplies. You begin thinking in ways that elevate your existence instead of repeating patterns that restrict it. Before 2026 arrives, establish this commitment to yourself. You'll invest in your mind like your future depends on it. Because it does. You'll read more than you scroll. You'll question more than you doubt. You'll learn more than you fear. You won't allow the world